walking you through how I wrote my second body paragraph from my Groundbreaker essay. And I want to first start with the notes that I came up with. The goal of my second body paragraph is to prove how all of the stuff that I talked about in my first body paragraph, all of those things that Walt Disney did that were so groundbreaking, how that made an impact on people later on. So I'm going to use the phrase paved the way a lot. So that's what I mean by that Walt Disney's accomplishments made it possible for other people later on to continue that progress that he made. So the claim that I'm going to be writing about is that he paved the way for others to continue his achievements in children's entertainment because his innovations were so successful. And I looked through my sources, and these are the things that I came up with. So one of the things that Walt Disney did that was so cool was he actually filmed live actors, and then he had his artists actually trace over those films. And the reason that he did that was because he wanted his animation to look a lot more realistic and a lot more fluid than when they were just hand-drawn. So that was a really innovative thing that he did. And that made me think that sort of paved the way for what we do with CGI now. And one of the best examples that I came up with was the Polar Express. So I'm planning on talking about that when I'm writing. And I did a little bit more research because I didn't know as much about CGI as I needed to. So I found this other article that was about the Jungle Book, which used a lot of CGI. And I found this section that I definitely want to use where they mention, it must be up here. They mentioned Polar Express, Beowulf, and A Christmas Carol. And those are the movies that I remember that had people that were made with CGI. So I think that part of what Walt Disney did was he paved the way for those kinds of animations to happen. And then I found this other great quote that talks about how Walt Disney established creative possibilities of the animated feature like Tangled and Frozen. So those are the pieces of evidence that I'm going to try to incorporate as I'm writing this body paragraph. Okay. So I'm going to start with what I want to prove in this paragraph, which is my topic sentence. So I'm going to start with, because of Walt Disney, others have been able to continue to make, to innovate, it's a stronger word, the children's animation and entertainment industry. Okay, so I'm going to start with my more general example, going back to my outline over here. I'm going to talk about the Tangled and Frozen bit before I move into the specifics of the animation. So I'm going to use a transition phrase like, at the very least, Walt Disney created a market for children's movies. Okay, so because Walt Disney made Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs and a lot of other movies after that, and they were so popular and they made so much money, that's kind of what started our children's film industry. So I want to make sure that I talk about why Walt Disney was so important for that today. And because his movies were so successful, other filmmakers wanted to see if they could be successful in the animated feature world. Okay. So all of this information that I've included so far is just coming from my own head. It's been influenced by the things that I've read, but because none of that is specific evidence that I got from another place, I don't need to be citing that. But I do need to cite the quotation that I'm going to use next, which is from the Lambie article, and it's this one right here. So I need to make sure that I remember to cite that. Walt Disney, and here's where I'm going to start quoting, established creative possibilities of the animated feature. Okay, so that's the specific direct quotation that I want to use. And I'm going to use like Tangled and Frozen. Like Tangled and Frozen. And I only need to italicize the title of the movies, not that word in between. Okay. And I'm going to add a little extra information onto this. 2 of the most popular recent animated movies. Okay. And I need to go back and cite. So this was Lambie. And I've got to look back and see what page that was on. That was on the second page. So I'm going to do Lambie 2 and then a period. All right. So I feel like that is, that's kind of the first part of what I'm proving in this paragraph. And now I'm going to move on to the animation component. One of the most innovative parts of Walt Disney's creation of Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs was how he changed the animation to make it more lifelike. Okay. And here's where I'm going to go back to my outline, and I want to look, and I want to use most of this quotation. So Disney animators, I'm going to use this part first. I'm going to start with according to Lambie. So I'm going to go ahead and give my citation at the very beginning in this tag here. Disney animators brought in live actors to perform some of the characters' actions. Okay, so that's where I'm going to end the quote, but I don't think that this is quite enough information yet because I need to talk about how the artist traced it. But I would rather paraphrase the second part of the quotation than do the entire direct quotation here. So I'm going to paraphrase in my own words. And those films were traced by the layout artist. Okay. So I have already said the author of this article, but I haven't given the page number yet. So instead of doing my in-text citation like this, since I already have that information, I'm going to actually get rid of Lambie's name here and just put the page number, and that works for my parenthetical citation. Okay, so now I want to give a little bit of my own information here. At the time, this was groundbreaking, but today it would seem like a waste of time to do such a detailed task by hand. Okay, so this is all my own interpretation of this groundbreaking thing by Walt Disney, and I'm starting to transition here into what we do today and why Walt Disney paved the way here. Okay, so animated filmmakers today often use CGI, and that stands for computer, I'm going to use a dash, generated imagery to make animation seem more realistic, but without Walt Disney's original innovation of tracing live actors' movements by hand. Okay, so this is where I want to come in and use the information that I got from this extra article. Sometimes when you're in the middle of your drafting process and you realize that you don't have all the information you need, you're still going to have to go and do a little bit more research. So that's where this is coming in. So this is the section of this article where it talks about the 3D animation that's actual people. So that's kind of what Walt Disney's ideas led to. So I'm going to copy and paste this entire section of the article. I'm just going to put it down here to be able to reference as I'm writing this part. Okay. So I need to go back and see. Without Walt Disney's original innovation of tracing live actors by hand, CGI might not have existed. Finish that thought. Okay. So now I want to use some of the information I have here. I'm going to start with a director, Robert Zemeckis. So I don't really need the experimented part. And I'm just going to start with this. Attempted to render real people in 3D animated form. Okay, I'm going to get rid of some of that information to make it a little shorter. So I'm going to end the quotation here and then paraphrase. With movies like The Polar Express, Beowulf, and A Christmas Carol. Okay, and this. So I'm going to skip the waxy glass-eyed look, and I'm going to move on to the good part of this, the part that recognizes how this is a step forward in animation, even if it's not perfect. So I'm going to say that this took huge steps in the realm of performance capture technology. Okay, so I need to go back to my source here, and I need to cite the author's last name. So I'm going to scroll to the top. His name is David Sims. So I do Sims, and because this is not a multiple page article, sometimes there will be pages like 1, 2, and 3 down here. Because it's all on one page, I don't really need to say that it's the first page. So I can just say Sims, and that's enough information here. So now I've got lots and lots of information, so I just need a wrap-up sentence. I'm going to get rid of that. Okay. Clearly, children's films. Okay. So I did talk about children's films at the beginning with Tangled and Frozen, Snow White and Seven Dwarfs, but then Beowulf is not necessarily a children's film. So even though Walt Disney made a huge impact on children's films, I also think he made a big impact on filmmaking in general. So I want to include that. So I'm going to say in the film industry in general would not be the same if Walt Disney had not made so many groundbreaking innovations. Okay. So here's my draft of my body paragraph. So just to review, I have this right here would be my topic sentence. That's what I'm proving. Okay, this right here is my first piece of evidence and explanation. Okay, and this right here is my second piece of evidence and explanation. So I've got a whole lot of different quotations from different sources, but really I'm still just trying to prove how he innovated how animation was done. So evidence and explanation 2. And then I have my wrap-up sentence. So when you are writing your second body paragraph, I want you to make sure that you have all of these things here.